Culture. Many have said it's probably the most important thing to target. It's probably the most, to some, important thing to go after, to impact, or to influence. Many have said that culture is downstream from politics. What you see in culture, you will eventually see in the political arena. I believe that we are currently in what I call a cultural Cold War. We are fighting a cultural Cold War for what it means not only to be human, not only what it means to be a human being, but also what it means to be a human being, particularly in the West, the cultural Cold War. In today's podcast, I have the privilege, the great privilege, and the great honor of speaking with Zuby, a man, a rapper, an author, a podcast host, an entrepreneur from the UK about culture, because he's engaging in many ways directly the onslaught of this cold culture war. Are we winning this war? Who is we? We meaning those who aren't necessarily part of the mainstream. We don't fit into the mainstream narrative. We don't fit into the orthodoxy. Are we winning? Honestly and truthfully, this cold cultural war. I talked to him about that a little bit. We get into the fanciful controversy of the Royals and much, much more. Great, great podcast. Hope you all enjoy.
You don't become what you want, because so much of wanting is about living in the space of what you don't have.
I believe that we all share this common desire. We all want to be liked. We all want to be accepted. Everything we do in some way considers that fact.
You can't bring life if you don't have vision. You don't build your character because, letting go of your ego.
Thank you for listening. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Changing the Narrative with me, your host, Jay Shakur. I have the privilege of talking to Zuby, a UK rapper, entrepreneur, and author, host of Real Talk with Zuby. This is an outstanding honor for me. I guess you could say I'm a fan. I'm definitely part of your audience, and I listen to your voice, and I think you have a prolific voice beyond just politics, which I think you're most known for, at least in the circles I travel. Mm-hmm. Getting more to who you are, I typically like to start most of the interviews that I do. I say a word and you say the first thing that comes to your mind, and then we jump off from there. Okay.
Okay, cool. Let's try it out.
All right. Let's start. So let's see. Music.
Hip hop.
Okay. Art.
Music.
Family.
Love.
Strength.
Power.
Okay. Royalty.
Kings.
Black.
White.
Okay. White.
Black.
Black. Okay.
Yeah, I think opposites on those ones somehow.
Okay. So what? I know you're, like I mentioned, you're known around the U.S. for politics and your music, but what would you say is the biggest misconception about you?
That's a good question, man. I think it depends on which audience we're sort of talking about here. I guess from a political standpoint, the biggest misconception would probably be that I'm some sort of like bad person or someone who has some ill intention or something like that. I think people who are ideologically opposed to me or who hold different views from me, they like to frame it as if I have my views because I somehow want to cause harm or damage or pain or insult or something like that to some individual or some group, which couldn't be further from the truth, right? I have my views because I have my views. If anyone wants them to be explained in more detail beyond a little soundbite or something like that, I'm always happy to explain any of my positions, and I can totally assure that none of them are rooted in any kind of villainous behavior or ill intention. Very, very much the opposite.
Definitely. You have a extensive background, Oxford, which is in the United States. I know for sure is like a sainted university, a sainted place for higher education. Oxford, computer science major. How did you end up from computer science major to full time in music as an independent artist?
Yeah, sure thing, man. So I've been a hip hop fan since I was about 12 or 13. I actually went to boarding school in the UK. So I grew up in Saudi Arabia. And when I was in boarding school, I just fell in love with hip hop during my teenage years, listening to lots of different artists. Then actually, when I went to university in my first year at Oxford, I started rapping there. So I wrote my first ever song when I was traveling. I got stuck in an airport in Paris, of all places. I was by myself. I was bored. I had like a 24-hour layover, and I just had like my headphones, my MP3 player, and I just started jotting down some rhymes and stuff like that. And then when I was in Nigeria over that vacation, I spent several weeks there, and I was just writing raps, just a cappella sometimes, or just with basic beats, just writing raps and playing them to my family in particular, occasionally to when I got back, playing them to my friends. And then one of my friends in university actually had a basic recording setup in his dorm room. So I used to go in there, I'd download beats primarily off of, it was soundclick.com at the time, before SoundCloud. So I go on there and just rap over beats, make songs. The first song I ever made was called The Bad Man. Then I made one called Oh No. Then I made a third one called Tonight. And I just started making a name for myself in the university. So in Oxford, there weren't a lot of people rapping. So I was just playing my stuff to people, and I started to get known as, oh yeah, Zuby, yeah, that's that guy that raps. And then in my second year of university, I actually had enough songs to put together my first album called Commercial Underground. So I put together the album. I researched online to see how to get CDs pressed up and everything. I just started out with 50 copies. I sold those 50 copies in about a week, just selling them hand to hand to people I know and friends and people who said they liked my music. And that was what sort of set off the light bulb as, okay, people are willing to pay for my music, right? That was the light bulb of, okay, maybe I can do more with this than it just being a hobby. Then after I graduated, I took a year out and I did my music full time for 1 year. By the way, that first album, in total, I ended up selling 3,000 copies of that independently. So that was, I sold 3,000 copies of that, by myself. Then I graduated, I took a year out, did my music full time, released my second album called The Unknown Celebrity. Started traveling beyond Oxford, going out to different cities in the UK, just doing the street hustle, man. Talking to people out there on the street, playing them my music through headphones, selling the CDs, £5 each, £7 each, and just started building my name like that, doing live shows here and there. And then I moved to London because I actually had a job opportunity before I left Oxford. I had a job offer from a big management consulting company. So I deferred it for 1 year to go do my music full time for a year. Then when that was up, I moved to London, started working full time, corporate job, suit and tie, everything, whilst juggling my music stuff on the side. And then after 3 years of that, in November 2011, I took the jump, man. I took the jump. I left my job, handed in my notice, and I've been self-employed ever since November 2011. Wow. Had a lot of ups and downs and trials and tribulations since then. And in the past couple of years, things have really started to bear fruit in a whole different way. But that's a story of the grind. So, to give people context, I put out my first album in 2006. So that's 15 years ago. Yeah, so for people who are kind of discovered me recently, I think it's good for people to know that, okay, this guy didn't just come out of nowhere or something. It's like, no, there's been my next album I'm putting out is going to be my ninth. It's going to be my ninth release. It's going to be my sixth album, my ninth release in total. So it's been a long journey to get here, and there's still a long way to go as well.
Yeah, and the sixth album is Word of Zuby, correct?
Yeah, that's right, man.
So I'm excited about that.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, I'm excited about it. It's a different level. It's a different level, and it's a lot more me. I think I know a lot has happened over the past 2 years since my last release. So I'm excited to put out a new one and hit people with something that's like much more new and up to date in terms of where my head is at, and also musically as well.
Definitely. What would you more into like the decision process for you deciding, okay, I have a good job, I have a steady job, steady pay, but I'm going to take this leap and go out on my own and pursue music full time. What was behind that decision making process? Because I think many right now, especially college students, are like, well, I have this passion, I do this on the side. I know many college students who are like that, but I need a job. I need to survive. I need to make money. So what would you advise, and what was your decision process behind that?
Yeah, sure thing. So I'd say there's three parts to it. There's really three parts to it. Number one, remember, but at this stage, I already have 3 releases out. I have 2 albums and 1 EP. So I'm not starting from ground zero. I already have fans. I already have followers on social media who actually already think I'm a full-time musician. So I was already making money from music. Like I told you, at this stage, I've sold, I don't know, 5,000 albums maybe. So I'm not raking in money, but I know that, okay, if I give this my full commitment, I know I can at least keep myself afloat, right? I know I can keep myself afloat. Yeah. So that concern wasn't really there. The next one, and this is the big one. This is a big one, which is I was on the younger end of people in my company, right? I was in my early 20s. So I was looking at people 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years my senior, and I'm like, do I want to be you when I'm 50 years old? And the honest, simple answer was no, right? It was no. Like, I don't want to still be working in this kind of environment when I'm in my 40s, when I'm in my 50s, et cetera. Like, there's this whole other thing and this whole other talent stack that I have, and I want to pursue it. And then leading on to that, the third part was simply, what's the worst that can happen? What's the worst that can happen, right? I'm 23. I've got an Oxford degree. I've got 3 years work experience in a big management consulting company. I'm able-bodied. Thank God. I'm also from like a stable family where worst comes to worst, I've got, older brothers, older sisters. I've got my parents. Like, I'm not going to be out on the street shaking a cup. Right. Yeah. Worst that can happen is I go out there, I put in the grind, I change my mind, or I don't reach the level of success that I want to, or whatever. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go do something a little more normal. Right. That's literally the worst case scenario. So those 3 factors, but particularly the second one, that's what made it. It wasn't a hard decision for me to make at all. It really wasn't a hard decision. To me, the bigger risk would have been staying in that job and living the rest of my life thinking, man, why didn't I give that a shot? Yeah. Like, why didn't I try it? Yeah. What if, right? I was like, nah, I have to explore that. I know I'll reach some level of success. How far, how high it will go, I don't know, but I've already reached some level of success. I've already got, a few thousand people have bought my music and come to my shows. So people like it. What if I spend more time on it and I can get it out to more people? That was my mindset.
Definitely. What would you, looking at your music, you're based in the United Kingdom. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on rap, hip hop in the United States?
Man, that's a hard question because it's such a big genre. It's hip hop is a huge genre, and it always has been. I think when some people say hip hop, some people's minds automatically go to mainstream, whatever's on the radio, whatever's on the charts. Other people's minds may go more to kind of old school stuff. Some people's minds go to more the underground. It's hard to say, there's tons of great music out there, tons of great music, tons of great artists. There's also tons of trash, right? Yeah. Right? But yeah. That's not, I think people act like that's new, but I'm like, that's not really new. It's always been like that. And I don't think it's so different for other genres. So here in the UK, right, you'll get people who say things like, British rap is better than American rap. But then they'll be comparing like the best British rappers to like the worst American ones, you know what I mean? And I'm kind of like, well, firstly, it's not a competition, right? Mm-hmm. Like, a dope artist is a dope artist. But beyond that, if you're going to compare, you at least have to, okay, if you're going to take like, and also it's not even a fair comparison because the USA probably has like 20 times as many rappers as the UK, right? The UK is smaller than California. Yeah. Right? The UK is smaller than Texas. So to compare a country the size and scale of the UK, of the USA to the UK on many things is not really a fair comparison. And also culturally, like the US is the home of hip hop. So I would always expect the USA to be dominant when it comes to hip hop, because it should be, right? There shouldn't be another country that's even capable of overtaking it. And I don't think that there really is, but yeah, there's tons of great stuff though. I think.
Any favorites that you have?
Ooh, yeah. I mean, my favorites are generally people who have been around for a long time.
Okay.
My two favorite rappers are Jay-Z and Tech-9. Those are my two favorite artists. But I like dozens, if not hundreds of different artists. Off the top of my head, obviously Tupac and Biggie. I like Nas.
Of course.
I like 50 Cent, especially like older stuff. I like The Game, Ludacris, T.I., Mobb Deep, Outkast. Man, like I could go on and on. I could go on. I like a lot of rap. I just like anything that's dope. I like anything that's dope. If you want to say more new, but even the people who are like more new, I'm like, that's not even new. Like I'm trying to think of who's like new. And of course there's the whole Kendrick, J. Cole, Drake era, but that's not even new now, right? They've been they've been around over a decade now. That's what I mean, right?
I think like what's the guy? Because I listen to older stuff too mostly. Yeah. So what is the man's name? Lil Baby. I think that's like the new. I don't know if you've even heard of him. That's the new era type, that are after the J. Cole's and the and those types. So, what would you say is what would you say separates or makes UK rap artists different from US rap artists, if anything?
Ooh. Well, number one, the accent is an obvious one.
Of course. Yeah.
And then UK, I mean, in the UK, you've kind of got two main branches, I guess. You've got grime, which is, 140 beats per minute, always in double time, like whole different tempo. And then you have kind of more like UK rap or hip hop, which is slower and more the sort of speed of most American hip hop. So those are kind of two separate branches. And the grime side of things is quite heavily influenced by garage and jungle and some other forms of music. So for someone who's not familiar with it, it can sound like a very bizarre version of like high paced hip hop. So I think those would be the biggest things. I think the accent is a big one. I don't obviously have a British accent, so for me, even in the UK, it's always been kind of weird for me because, it's a weird one. I feel like on a national level, my accent has possibly hindered my career in the UK, but I think because people are weird about it. People have always been weird about it here because firstly, if you sound American, like people. To this day, like I've been doing this for 15 years. There are still people to this day who think my accent is fake. They think for the past my entire life I've been putting on an accent. Oh, Zuby, he's trying to sound American. It's like I didn't grow up in the UK, you idiots. Right? You see what I mean? But it's like I'm not going to sound like Skepta or Dizzy Rascal. Like I'm not from London. I didn't grow up there. I went to an American school. Like if I've been faking my accent for 30 something years, then that's quite a defeat. I sound like me. But in the UK, you'll have some people, whether they're DJs or they're radio people or whatever, and they really want the UK sound. So as someone who doesn't have that sound, just naturally, some of those people are kind of unwilling to support the music because they'll be like, oh, it sounds too American. Then 2 seconds later, they'll be like championing American artists or whatever. But it's one of those things that's just kind of weird. But I think on an international level, the fact I have a more, international accent helps in a way because it's a little. I think people are starting to get over the British accent thing. Like I know if you go back like 15 years ago, British rappers it was really hard for them to make a dent in the USA because like people just couldn't get over the accent. I think people now are starting to like a lot of Americans I think now are like, oh yeah, actually it's kind of dope. They're listening to like Stormzy or Skepta or whatever, and they're like, okay, cool, like that's cool. But that was like a multi-decade process. But I think for me, my accent sort of plays in my favor in that it's it's more neutral, I guess, in a way.
More neutral.
It's more neutral. Yeah. So if someone in Texas hears my music, it's not like, oh, whoa, like this sounds so different from what I'm used to. You know, same with someone in New York or even someone in Europe or whatever. It's kind of closer to what they might be used to. So maybe it plays to my advantage in that way, but it's just what it is. I'm just me. I'm just me.
That's all you can be.
Yeah, it's me. Like, to criticize me for my accent is a weird thing because I'm like, it's literally my accent. Like, if I were pretending to be American, that would kind of be weird. Yeah, sure. But it's like, I'm not. Like, listen to me talk. Like, it's the same. It's the same.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of you living in the UK, but not necessarily being from the UK, what are your thoughts on the recent? I don't even think it's a controversy, in my opinion, but in America, in the United States, it has been, and it has been viewed that way, presented in the media that way. But the controversy around the royal family and Meghan Markle and all of that. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are I don't really have very many. Like, honestly, like I haven't seen the interview, and I'm not planning to watch it. Like, I don't care. I mean, these people are like multi millionaires or billionaires. You know, that whole interview. Like, I haven't even seen the interview, but it's literally an American female billionaire talking to a literal prince and a princess in a $15 million mansion.
Yeah.
On a patio that's probably more expensive than most people's houses, about like how oppressed they are and how difficult things. That's like, you know, I have limited sympathy for that. I have sympathy, but my sympathy is kind of limited. I'm like, come on, guys.
Same
like,
here.
Yeah. I'm like, there's a lot of pain and struggle and poverty in the world. So like, spare me if I don't feel super unfortunate about, oh, you know, people said mean things about you on social. It's like, yeah, you know, it happens. It kind of sucks, but
is it like go ahead.
Oh, and then I was going to say, and also the whole thing about them moving to the USA, like, I don't know how that came in the States, but in the UK, it was very much like a privacy thing, right? It was like, we want to get away from the media. We want to have our own privacy. We don't want to be bothered. And it's like, okay, so you do that. And then you go to an interview with Oprah, and now everyone's talking about you again. It's like, well, if you actually wanted privacy, you could have your privacy, but you clearly don't. So
that never makes sense to me. You want privacy, you complain about that, but yet you consent to an interview with the number one talk show host probably in the world.
Exactly. It's not believable.
You don't expect people to watch. I don't know.
Of course.
Is this the general sense there? Your general opinion? Oh, I don't care, or would you just say that's just you?
I think all my opinions are just me. I would never want to claim to speak for anybody else. I don't know what the general gist is. You know, you have it's varied. It's varied. You know, you have people who are very pro royal family. You have people who just don't care at all. You have people who are into the whole celebrity, just the general celebrity thing. I'm not a celebrity gossip guy. Like, I just don't care.
Gotcha.
To me, they're just people. Like, they're just people. I don't know them personally. I haven't met them. They may come across a certain way to me. But even as someone who is a public figure to a degree, I'm also I try to be quite cautious of saying things as if I know people when I don't. Because I don't like it when people do it. I don't like it when people do it to me, right? When I'm seeing someone saying, "Oh, Zuby is this and Zuby is that," all this negative stuff. I'm like, when did we meet? Like, right? Like, well, when did I talk to you? Like,
never had a conversation.
Yeah. Exactly. So, you know, I think you can criticize certain works and actions, but I'm careful to not speak on people as if I know them personally and I know their character. I know what's in their heart. I know what's in their mind, etc. I can say, well, they come across to me like this. That's what the vibe I get. But I don't know Prince Harry. I don't know Meghan Markle. To me, they're just two other people who happen to be, you know, for him by dint of birth, literally by dint of birth, he happens to be a prince. Like, okay, without that, we wouldn't know who he was. She happened to marry a prince. Without that, I wouldn't know who she is. So it doesn't bother me any more than any other married couple in the world, you know? Yeah.
I see. So I personally thought, you know, because from what I gathered, I didn't watch the interview either, nor do I want to watch it. But from clips and things from what I gathered, it was simply this, like you mentioned, the whole victimhood oppression thing that is seemingly in everything nowadays. And I thought it was only really in America, in the United States mostly, but it's spreading globally. It seems like. You said something interesting. You tweeted something interesting the other day. You said racism is trying its very best to die of natural causes, but a vocal minority are hell bent on keeping it alive, especially those whose livelihoods depend on it. You go on to say the majority of people in the modern West do not care about race very much. Remarkable progress has been made in the last 100 years, but instead of celebrating that and letting the wound heal naturally, agitators keep picking at the scab. And then you say the demand for racism is greater than the supply of racism. Do you think the wound will ever be able to heal?
I do, yes. I honestly do. I mean, I think the progress that's been made, even in the last 50 years, and let's take a country like the USA where, you know, real talk, 50, 60, 70 years ago, like they weren't as bad as they were a couple hundred years ago to be black in America, but like you had literally laws on the books. This is one thing that's funny because, you know, I do get quite a lot of the audience. I'll tell you straight up, the audience I polarize the most is black Americans. I have some who are like super, super like love what I'm doing and love what I'm saying and feel like I say a lot of things that they want to say. And then I also get a lot of hate. But, you know, and it's funny because a lot of people think I'm unaware of like American history, right? They think I hold my positions because like I'm not aware of slavery or I'm ignorant of Jim Crow or I was like, no, I've studied that. Like I understand the history. However, I view a metaphor, and this goes for everything. This goes for the whole oppression narrative. And it's like, firstly, as we know, if any, you know, black Americans today, no black American today was ever a slave. No white American today held slaves, like, especially like on the younger end, like history is immutable, right? History is immutable. It's really important to know it because you can learn from people's past mistakes and you can see, okay, also understand how you got to a certain position. But dwelling on history all the time and blaming everything on history is really, it's so counterproductive to me. It's like trying to drive a car and you're just staring at the rearview mirror, right? You're literally not looking ahead and you're not steering. You're just looking behind you the whole time. It's like what's in the past is in the past. And there's a lot of dark stuff in history, like beyond black Americans suffering in America. Like history is replete with awful stuff in every single continent, every continent. And I think it's fun. I think it's an interesting thing. Like if you think about it logically, it's quite likely that most people on Earth are both descendants of slaves and descendants of slaveholders. Right? If you were to go back far enough, right? You think like most people, like we've all certainly got ancestors who have done great things and ancestors who have done terrible things. Like I don't know, like it's possible my great grandfather was some freaking Nigerian warlord or something. Like I don't know, but like I didn't do it. I'm not responsible for those sins, and also, you know, I can't take glory for any good things that person may have done as well. So coming back to the main thing, yeah, I do think that like racism is freaking stupid.
Obviously, yeah.
It's one of the dumbest things that like on every level, like historically, modern day, it's so stupid. It's literally skin deep. Like if you take a black person, an Arab, an Asian, a white person, whatever, and you were literally to like peel off like the top like couple millimeters, millimeters of skin, you all look the same. Everyone looks the same. Like you just look like that. You know those biology charts where you have like the skin off and you can see the muscles and the bones. That's what everyone looks like, right? Same blood, organs, everything. Like everyone looks the same. It's literally just this surface level. It's so funny because I always thought this even as a child. Like I remember when I first even heard of the concept of racism, because growing up in Saudi, I was, you know, very, very diverse community from the beginning. And I was so like confused by even the concept. I was just like, wait, what do you mean? So someone doesn't like someone because they're a different, I was like, I remember as a child just being like, that doesn't make sense. Like that's stupid. Like, why is that a thing? And I'm still like that. I'm just like, it's dumb. Like in any direction, it's just like, it doesn't matter. So I feel like I said in that tweet, and I think most people are I think most people are there. Like whether you're in the UK, you're in the USA, you're in not all of Europe, but most of it, most people don't care. Most people don't care. Like you see it.
Yeah.
Like we're not blind. Like, you know, you see what people look like. But in terms of making like a huge character judgment or choosing who you won't hang out with or you won't or who you'll do this, like most people are just like whatever. And people are mixing anyway. And, you know, eventually I think it's already almost there. Like I said in that tweet, I feel like it's already almost there. But it's literally an industry. It's literally an industry. And for the media, for the politicians, for certain types of activists and agitators, it is lucrative. Literally, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry to keep people seeing the world this way. Because if they stop doing that, then their hustle is dead, right? If you make your living off racial agitation in any way, shape, or form, and racism ceases to be a thing, then that's the incentives are set up in the wrong way, right? Then there's nothing, you can't talk about that. And I also think it's just, I don't know. It's a funny topic because it's even kind of funny for me to address it because to me, the only reason I even mention it, like I could happily live the rest of my life without ever using the words like white, black, race in that context ever again. Like I could happily live with that. Like I don't care. But because some people are still stuck on that and still view things that way, that's kind of the only reason it even comes up for me, because there are very few situations to me in my own life where it's particularly relevant or interesting. Like out of all the things about a human being, I literally think it's one of the least interesting things. It's interesting to the degree of like, oh, okay, like where's this person originally from, or what's their ancestry or something. You know, that can be interesting, right? I live in the UK. Clearly, I'm black. Someone may see me and be like, oh, like, you know, where is your family from? Are you originally from Jamaica or Ghana or Nigeria, whatever? You know, it can be an interesting talking point. But in terms of like making a judgment on me, like, you know, positive or negative or whatever, it's like, it's dumb. Like it doesn't tell you how I think. It doesn't tell you what's in my heart. It doesn't tell you if I'm a nice guy, I'm a bad guy, I'm law abiding, I'm criminal, you know, whatever, any personality traits. It just doesn't say anything about that. You know, it doesn't say anything about that. So for people to assume it does or kind of want it to me is just, it's very silly. It was silly back in the 1940s and in the 1800s, and it's silly in 2021.
Tiger Woods, who's a very popular, I hate the term African American, black golfer. His back in, I believe, the early or late 90s, he was on the Oprah Winfrey show with his father, who is a major influence in his life, and he's biracial. So Oprah asks the question, the typical, I guess you could say, race baiting question. Basically, how did you teach your son to grow up in America as a black man? And the short answer was, and it kind of, I don't know if you've seen this clip, it has made its way around social media, but he stunned her, and you can see the reaction on her face. She simply said, when he said, "Oh, I taught him to be a part of the human race," that stunned her, and she didn't know what to say, how to move with that. I think it's extremely interesting how, the ideals that people like Martin Luther King held, judging people on their character, the content of the character, not necessarily their skin color, or something as superficial as skin color. How we have kind of inverted that in the name of civil rights or in the name of justice, saying, hey, yeah, we're going to judge all white people as racist, white supremacists, and having white privilege, instead of just judging individuals based on character, beliefs, culture, values, morals, right? Yeah. I think it's insane. How would you define yourself politically, if at all? Because I think you get branded in the States probably as a conservative or Republican, which you probably are not. And probably, I believe the equivalent or similar is the Labour Party, if I'm not mistaken, in the UK.
Conservative Party.
The Conservative Party. And then the Labour Party is more
left-leaning, yeah.
Okay. So how would you brand yourself or describe yourself politically, if at all?
Honestly, I don't mind what people label me politically. I I've often joked that it even depends on where you are, because to me the labels are quite relative, right? So I grew up in Saudi Arabia, right? In Saudi Arabia, I'm like a progressive, okay, right?
Yeah.
In Nigeria, I'm kind of like a centrist. In the UK, I'm pretty conservative slash libertarian. So by Western standards, I'm certainly more right leaning. Like I'm more conservative slash libertarian leaning. If I do that political compass test, I'm very firmly in the bottom right quadrant. So if someone wants to call me a libertarian or call me a conservative, then that's fine. I think the labels have somewhat limited use, especially these days, because I don't know, we're living in a time where conservatives in many ways are more liberal than people who call themselves liberal, and people who call themselves liberal are more conservative in some areas. I mean, if you want a simple example, I mean, this shouldn't even really be politicized, but even what's going on with this whole pandemic situation, right? The people who are pushing to, lock people in their houses and force people to wear masks and even perhaps force people to take vaccinations, like that's coming from people who are so-called liberal. But by the definition of the word, you would think that that approach would be a much more conservative approach, right? Let's lock down, let's shelter in place, etc. But actually it's the so-called conservatives who are like, no, like let's open up, let's give people the choice, like give people freedom, etc. So I think the labels are kind of muddy these days. But if I call myself something, I tend to call myself a free thinker. I do have my own leanings and I do have very strong views on certain things, but I am also very open-minded, and I'm very willing. I'm not someone who's like, oh, I won't talk to someone who disagrees with me, or I won't. It's like, no, like I'm open. I'll talk to anybody. I'm open to having my ideas challenged. I'm opening to challenging other people's ideas. I'm aware we all have our blind spots. And the only way you learn anything is by being wrong or being challenged, right? Everything you know is learned through that process. So people who are unwilling to do that, they're kind of limiting themselves, if anything, and limiting their own understanding of other human beings, right? Because there can be someone who I really very much disagree with or come to a different conclusion to, but I like to at least try to be able to understand the epistemology of how they got there, even if the logic is flawed or I think what they're proposing is not right or not productive. I want to at least understand that mentality. On that note, actually, and from what you previously said, interestingly, I'd started reading it before, but I only for the first time properly read all the way through the autobiography of Malcolm X, right? And that was a super duper interesting book because, especially in the sort of mid stage of his life, like, he took a very, very different approach to Martin Luther King Jr., right? And he was, literally calling white people devils and casting that whole, all white people as X and, very militant and this and that. And, throughout the whole thing, it's interesting because, like, he has some ideas where I'm like, yo, like, I'm totally on board with this. And then something else, I'm like, nah, like, no, like, not, like, not that part or whatever. But then even in himself, you see how he evolves. He goes to Mecca and he realizes, oh, okay, like white people aren't all evil kind of thing. And he learns. And so I like to just listen to different people, different ideas. And in terms of what I implement, kind of take what I think works and, scrap what I don't think works or what I don't think is helpful. Even with different countries, I've traveled to a lot of different countries, lived in different cultures. So a lot of my views also are shaped by being exposed to culture in Saudi Arabia, culture in Nigeria, culture in the USA, culture in the UK. They all have their pros and their cons and things that I like and things that I don't like. So in terms of my own worldview, I kind of cherry pick a little and take what I like from each one.
Got you. So wrapping up here, we kind of got into it a bit before, what's next for you, what's coming. How would you define legacy, and what do you think, or what would you want your legacy to be?
I want to have a positive impact and influence on over 10 million people. That's my sort of like life goal. I hope one day it'll be way more than 10 million, but I like the 10 million number because it's big enough to be sort of scary and to make me think big. But I also know that it's truly achievable. When I die, I want 10 million people to feel sad. Put it that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a very approximate number. Will you ever move to the USA? That's the question I've always wanted to ask you.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anytime soon.
It's quite likely. I don't know yet, but it's pretty likely. It's pretty likely. Yeah.
All right.
There's a lot. Most of my audience is already there. Most of my income is generated from the USA. Most of my listeners, both my music and my podcast, are in the USA. So it's a kind of obvious potential move for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time again.
No doubt, Jay, man. Good to talk, bro.
Definitely. And again, a pleasure talking to you. I love your music. Love what you stand for. And thank you for being a voice.
No doubt, bro. 100%.
You don't become what you want, because so much of wanting is about living in the space of what you don't have.
I believe that we all share this common desire. We all want to be liked. We all want to be accepted. Everything we do in some way considers that fact.
You can't bring life if you don't have vision. You don't build your character because, letting go of your ego.
Thank you for listening.